At 17, I felt more mature and special than my peers, so I dropped out of high school and decided to make my own career. My classmates were working part-time retail jobs in family grocery stores to pay for daily expenses, books, food, appointments, etc. But I left home and planned to apply for a real job in the town where I grew up, Harmsville. Harmsville is located west of Washington, D.C., in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. It was originally a traditional agricultural town, and most of the townspeople worked in the local and surrounding areas, engaged in farming, logging, and operating homesteads. Later, the flames of the Civil War spread here, and most of the buildings became ruins. The livestock were also used as military rations by the Union Army. Later, when the Army left, the locals began to build some homes and farmhouses in the surrounding mountains. I was very naive at the time. I always felt that I belonged in the mountains and hoped to find a job with a local construction company. Of course, it would be better to find a job with a local fire department. So from then on, I wanted to be a tough guy and grow a beard. But to my dismay, after a while, I never grew more than a few scraggly hairs on my chin. Days passed, and I was out and about all day. I realized I couldn't do this any longer, so I took a job at a local farm. Alameda Farm. I was tired of traveling around, so I took the job as soon as I could. You could say it was a disappointment, but I thought it was better than working at the family grocery store. I started working there in January 1894. It was cold, and snow covered the mountains of the Shenandoah Valley. The rivers and lakes were frozen, and goods could no longer be shipped over the mountains from the big cities in the east. People could only survive on the supplies they had stored. Mrs. Goodson ran the Alameda farm, and at this time the only thing left on the farm was a few cows and 26 horses in the barn. I lived in a storage shed behind the barn, which was actually quite nice. There was a well and a fireplace for my use, and it was only a few hundred feet from where I worked. The first few days, I spent some time learning some daily tasks, collecting firewood and feeding livestock. Sometimes I chatted with the Goodson family, who were very friendly and would invite me to their home for dinner from time to time. I began to appreciate this opportunity. Everything seemed fine until one night. After I had finished cleaning the stables, I was leaning against the storage shed, facing the woods by the farmhouse, smoking a cigarette. The night was quiet, the snow was light, and a little light came from the fireplace in the house through the window. I took a deep drag on my cigarette and let out a leisurely puff of smoke. Suddenly, a rhythmic knocking sound came from somewhere in the woods. I put out my cigarette and held my breath, trying to hear it more clearly. The knocking sound was like the drums I heard at ball games. It started with a loud boom, followed by 3 smaller booms, and then the cycle started again. I pulled the revolver from my waist and cocked the hammer. People always say that you're better off not whistling at night in the Appalachians. But at this moment I didn't care, and I raised the revolver. I whistled provocatively, observing the woods and listening carefully. Silence. I squinted my eyes and bit my lip, expecting the sound to come again. But the drum stopped. I wanted to shoot at the source of the sound, but I was afraid of alarming the horses, so I didn't act rashly. The next morning, I woke up and did my usual work. The snow continued to fall. In the evening, I was smoking outside the shed as usual, and suddenly I heard a noise again, but this time I didn't hear the sound of drums, but the crackling of branches being stepped on. I immediately pulled out my revolver. If there was a mountain lion in the woods, it would not be something I could easily deal with. It was pitch black all around, and the only light came from the window behind me. Suddenly, I vaguely heard something getting closer and closer. The hair on my neck stood up in fear, and I fired 3 shots in front of me. Bang! 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 With the last gunshot, a terrifying monster slowly walked out of the woods. It had a tall and strong human body, but with a stag's head. Its antlers were huge and deformed. and its empty eye sockets emitted a deep, dark red light. For a few seconds, I was almost frozen in place, unable to breathe. I hid in the house, locked the door, curled up on the bed. My nerves were tense, and the muzzle of the trembling gun was pointed at the door, but there was no movement at the door. I kept persisting like this until fatigue overcame me. Dong, 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 the urgent knocking on the door woke me up. I opened my eyes, and the sunlight poured into the shed from outside. Am I still alive? Get out, boy. This was Mrs. Goodson's voice. I quickly got up from the bed and opened the door. Did you shoot last night? My horse was scared. Did you drink too much last night? I tried to recall the horror of last night. It might sound too ridiculous to Mrs. Goodson. So I lied and told her that I was drunk and the gun went off accidentally. She scolded me a few words, but out of her usual kindness to me, she still brought me coffee and breakfast as usual. In the next few days, I did my farm work as usual and nothing special happened, but every time I smoked at night, I still felt that someone was spying on me in the woods. So every night when I went out, I brought an extra oil lamp and the shotgun I had used since I was a child. A few weeks later, on an ordinary snowy night, I smoked outside the shed as usual. The snowflakes fell slowly, and the light of the oil lamp was colorful. I took a deep breath of smoke and then exhaled all the fatigue of the day. Crack! The sound of branches breaking suddenly came from the woods. I immediately woke up and grabbed the shotgun to load it. Get out, you damn bastard! I shouted into the woods. The noise disappeared, and the whole forest seemed to be quiet for a few seconds. I could only hear my heart beating wildly. But suddenly, a response broke out in the silent darkness. Get out, you damn bastard! I froze, my own voice yelling at me in the darkness. I frantically aimed my rifle toward the woods and pulled the trigger. Click! The bolt stuck, and I cursed as I dropped the rifle, pulled out my revolver, and fired 6 shots into the dark woods before turning and running toward the stable. I ran as fast as I could to reload the revolver, and the oil lamp slipped off my body and fell into the thick snow, the only light gone. There was a pair of eyes with a dark red glow in the darkness, moving toward me. It must be that monster with a deer head and a human body. I quickened my pace, tears and snot running down my face. I turned and fired 3 more shots in the direction of the monster, but that didn't seem to slow it down. Instead, it made some kind of laugh, some kind of terrible, evil laugh. The laughter and my own words seemed to come from all directions and echoed in my mind. Get out of here, you damn bastard! Arriving at the stable, I kicked open the first stall door. The horse hadn't been saddled yet, but I untied the reins and climbed up without hesitation. At this moment, the monster's laughter seemed to have come to me. The whole stable was immediately in chaos, and all the horses were banging on the wooden door in fear, trying to escape from here. Hurry up, girl! I slapped the horse, and she ran desperately, rushed out of the stable, past the barn, along the long dirt road, and ran through the wooden arch of Alamedia Farm until she ran a few miles more, and the terrifying laughter completely disappeared. Before dawn, I met a caravan. I choked and told them my experience. They didn't seem to believe my crazy story, but they still tried to comfort me. I drank a bottle of wine and finally calmed down. I sat in the back of the carriage. The cold wind blew my face painfully, but I was really glad to escape from here. The sun was about to rise, and with the bumps along the way, fatigue came, and I gradually lost consciousness. Just as I was about to close my eyes, something on the horizon caught my attention, a pair of huge and weird antlers. The story has come to a pause, my dear believers. I wonder if you're feeling a bit of a shiver right now. But remember, no matter how unsettling the tales may be, your priest is right here, guarding your dreams. So don't be afraid. Close your eyes and drift off to sleep peacefully. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can join me every night. Good night, and may God bless you with sweet dreams.